talking about defence budget, first of all, Ben Wallace says he's got enough money at the moment from the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Privately, we're being told he's saying something different. How does Labour feel?
I think it's very clear that Ben Wallace and Number 10 are very divided on this issue. We've been warning the government for some time that there is a problem. Just a year ago, they published their integrated review of foreign and defence policy. That was meant to set the country's strategic security priorities for the next 10 years. And in that, there was very little reference to Russia, even though we were already seeing Russian aggression on the increase and a growing threat in our own backyard. We said to the government at the time, it is a mistake to reduce the size of the army. They've cut 10,000 troops out of our armed forces. They've reduced our army to its smallest size in 300 years. And in the focus on China, they forgot about the problems in our own neighbourhood. I think Ben Wallace is right to get serious and start thinking about how they're going to repair the damage that they've done. But the UK shouldn't be in a situation where we've done so much damage to our own security that we're having to scrabble around to try to work out how to repair it at this late stage.
So spending more on defence, where would that money come from?
Well, that's the question. At a time of soaring inflation, low growth in the economy, and a government that has raised taxes on working people, the only major economy to do that during an inflation crisis, that is the problem that the government has created. I think it's right to review defence spending in light of Russian aggression. I think it's right, certainly, for the government to review its own strategy in relation to that. What I'd really like to know from Ben Wallace, and I suspect he will be called in front of MPs in the coming days to explain this announcement this morning, is how the government envisages they're going to spend that money. There is clearly a split in government, with Ben Wallace saying we've got to work more closely with partners, we've got to partner up through NATO, which we fully and wholeheartedly support, and Liz Truss, who is currently on tour, smashing up the relationships on which we're going to depend if we're going to stand up to Russian aggression.
Is it right that the money that we're spending to try to defend Ukraine or to help Ukraine defend itself should be part of this budget?
I think it's really important that we take our national security seriously. I don't think this government has done so in recent years. We shouldn't have been making harsh, deep cuts to our armed forces that left us with the smallest standing army in 300 years. The first job of any government is to protect its own citizens. And I think in light not just of growing Russian aggression on our doorstep, but also the major challenge that is posed by the rise and growing influence of China, that this has got to be a top priority for any government.
I know you want to talk about special needs education and the challenges as far as funding that is concerned.
Well, of course, and I'm sitting here today in Harrogate with local government leaders from right across the country, Labour, Conservative, Liberal Democrat, all political parties and none, to talk about the challenges that they face on the front line at the moment, trying to keep some of those vital services going. What we need to see is a far more proactive approach from ministers. We need to see ministers like Michael Gove getting on the front foot, sitting down with employers and unions to try and work out how we fill huge shortages in the workforce. At the moment, we've got big problems in our schools, we've got problems in our hospitals, we've got problems in our local government services as well, including social care, which are affecting families all over the country. We've got to keep these services running. We've got to pay people properly. We've got to square that circle. Nobody has a magic wand. Nobody can do this alone. But in the end, the only solution to this is a proactive government that plays its part, that partners with our frontline workers rather than treating them as enemies, to keep those services running, and does the job that they were elected to do, which is to level up this country and get the economy firing on all cylinders. Growth is the only way out of this conundrum, I'm afraid.
Do you support Nicola Sturgeon in her attempt to seek clarification on whether a second independence referendum would be legal?
No, I think Nicola Sturgeon has some brass neck. She and her friends in the SNP were the ones who said that the independence referendum was a once in a generation chance to settle the question. And what she's done in the last 24 hours is nothing to do with the interests of Scotland. It's to do with the interests of the SNP. She's launching an election bid. There are 700,000 people on waiting lists in Scotland for NHS treatment. If I were in charge in Scotland, I would be looking very seriously at how to tackle that crisis. This is the thing that is keeping families in Scotland awake at night, and she ought to be focusing on that.
Talk to me, if you would please, about the Prime Minister. He does seem to be, being quite prime ministerial, should we say, on the world stage, and it looks as though he's doing a pretty good job. Are we forgetting all about Partygate now?
Well, look, I think the problem that Boris Johnson has is that he's stepping into the global arena at a time when people badly need leadership from Britain. But after what the Prime Minister himself has accepted is a lost decade, where the British government has not shown that leadership, even at the time when he's standing with world leaders to present what ought to be a united front against Russian aggression, his own foreign secretary is creating and stoking division with our closest neighbours. My message to both Liz Truss and the British government, but also to the French government and the European Union, is we cannot afford to continue to be divided in the face of the challenges that we all collectively share. We've got to find a solution so that we can trade well, so that we can cooperate well, and that surely has got to include putting back on the table something that the British government took off the table a couple of years ago, which is how we bake in proper foreign policy cooperation with our closest neighbours in Europe.
Good to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.